Red suits you, but not for long. The voice came from the shadows, low, intimate, and ice-cold. She hadn't heard footsteps. No hint of presence. But suddenly, the words were at her ear, close enough to feel the breath. And yet, the sidewalk behind her was empty. Rain drifted down in steady lines on Crestline Avenue. A flickering street lamp buzzed overhead as Emily Carter hurried along the lonely lane. She was just 24, a marketing intern, tired after another late night at the agency. The red coat wrapped around her small frame looked elegant, but couldn't shield her from the cold creeping up her spine. Her phone had died hours ago. The usual shortcut behind the old bookstore waited, just a block away. She had no idea she was being followed. He had been watching her since she left the building. 3 blocks. Measured steps, silent breath, eyes fixed on how the red coat moved. In the wind, she entered the alley, unaware that it would be her last decision. A firm grip silenced her scream before it could echo. An arm around her mouth, another crushing her waist. He dragged her deeper into the alley, beyond view of the road. No cameras, no witnesses, no sound except the rain. She fought violently, kicked and scratched, nails tearing into his skin. Her strikes drew blood, but he didn't scream. He didn't even blink. Instead, he whispered again, voice calm and fascinated. Fighting makes it better. I like it when they fight. A syringe pierced her neck, quick and practiced. The sedative worked fast. Her muscles gave out, her fight fading. He caught her before she collapsed. He crouched beside her, brushing the soaked coat with a gloved hand. You chose red. They always choose red. 2 hours later, her eyelids fluttered open. She was upright, barely, in a freezing, dim room. Walls covered in soundproof padding. A single bulb above. Arms and legs bound to an old iron chair. Her mouth sealed. With duct tape. He stood in front of her now. Shirtless, gloved, calm. Surgical instruments, lined in a perfect row on a metal tray. There was no rage in his expression. Only curiosity. As though he wasn't about to mutilate, but study. He removed the tape slowly, watching her lips tremble as breath rushed out. She screamed. He didn't react. No panic. No need to hush her. The room was built for silence. He picked up a scalpel, running its cool edge along her skin, from jawline to collarbone. Do you know why you're here? He spoke as if explaining a lesson, not preparing for a ritual. Because red means stop, but none of you do. You keep walking right into me. The scalpel pressed into her skin, shallow but deliberate. The first cut opened her collarbone. Her scream cracked into sobs. No one can hear you. He murmured to himself as he worked. Clean cuts, symbols etched into her arms. Blood dripping rhythmically onto the floor. He collected it. Reverently, in a silver bowl, the red coat was removed, folded, and placed neatly on a mannequin in the corner. Every piece belongs somewhere. You belong to the gallery now. By the end, her body had gone still. The life drained. The blood ritual complete. He stepped back, head tilted. Hands steady. He stared at her like a finished painting. Detective Reid Harlow stood silently as the crime scene unit lifted the tarp. Emily's body was seated, posed carefully, on a wooden bench in Franklin Park, nearly 2 miles from where she was taken. The morning sun hadn't yet risen. Fog clung to the grass. She sat upright, hands folded in her lap, red lipstick painted perfectly across her pale lips. A plastic rose tucked behind her ear. No coat, no hide. Reid exhaled smoke, watching the quiet horror. It was the 4th body in 6 weeks. All women in their 20s. All dressed in red. All killed with surgical precision. No fingerprints. No hair. No camera footage. Just a posed body. And a message. Carved into the wood beneath Emily's seat were the words, "Red is not a color. It's a warning." Reid stared at the message, and the quiet fear creeping through his chest returned. Reid Harlow crouched lower, running a gloved finger across the carved letters. The grooves were precise, deliberate, not rushed. The killer had taken his time. Behind him, The flash of camera bulbs sparked against the morning fog. The media had arrived quicker than usual. Yellow tape was already being pushed, questioned, ignored. Reporters barked into microphones, each one trying to be the first to say what no one wanted to hear, that Crestline's phantom had struck again. Reid stood up, exhaling smoke into the chilled air. His cigarette trembled slightly between his fingers. "Fourth girl in 6 weeks," said Officer Lara Patel beside him. Same coat, same staging, same message. He didn't reply. His eyes remained locked on the scene. Emily's body was posed, carefully, almost respectfully. Her back straight, hands folded in her lap, red lipstick perfectly applied, like a porcelain doll in a silent play. Her eyes had been closed, but gently, as if she'd gone to sleep. The plastic rose behind her ear fluttered in the breeze. Reid lit another cigarette with a dying flame of the first. "He's getting bolder," he muttered. "Dumping her in a public park. He wants the audience." Now, the crime scene unit worked around them, taking blood samples, photographing angles, preserving trace evidence that likely wouldn't matter. The killer was meticulous. No fingerprints, no tire tracks, no hair or skin or fabric left behind. Just symbols. Just messages dot and fear dot by 9 a.m. The news vans had multiplied dot. Every channel showed the same headline. "Red deaths continue. Who is the Crestline killer?" Anchor voices spoke over slow pans of the crime scene. Helicopter shots captured the closed-off park, the body being wheeled away under white sheets. Police refused to confirm the identity, but social media had already done the work. Emily Carter, age 24, last seen leaving her office late last night. A coworker posted a photo of her in the same red coat she now no longer wore. #Justice for Emily was trending before noon. At City Hall. The mayor held a press conference. "We are actively investigating every lead. Additional patrols are being deployed. We are working closely with the FBI, and we will not rest until the person responsible is brought to justice." Empty promises. Scripted outrage. What the cameras didn't show was the trembling in his hands. By afternoon, a curfew was issued to 9 p.m. sharp. All non-essential businesses were to close early. University classes moved online. Public transportation after dark was halted. An emergency phone alert buzzed across the city at 2:17 p.m. Stay vigilant. Avoid travel alone. Report suspicious activity. Downtown emptied faster than usual. Red clothing disappeared from wardrobes overnight. Women dyed their coats black, navy, gray. Stores removed red dresses from displays. Children were warned not to speak to strangers, not to go near alleys or parks or even playgrounds without a parent nearby. By evening, Crestline felt like a city holding its breath. Inside the precinct, the task force room was quiet, except for the sound of paper shuffling and tired fingers on keyboards. Corkboard at the center of the wall held 4 photos. All women, all posed, all draped in red just hours before they were taken. Below each photo were handwritten notes. Maps, corner reports, no overlaps, no common hangouts, no shared acquaintances. The only link? Red. Reid leaned over the board. His eyes kept returning to Emily. "We're missing something," he muttered. Agent Dana Graves looked up from her files. She was the FBI liaison, recently assigned. Sharp suit, sharper eyes. What if red isn't just a pattern? What if it's a trigger? Reid blinked. Trigger? She tapped the bench photo. He's not choosing them randomly. He's hunting, waiting, and when he sees red, coat, lipstick, purse, doesn't matter, it flips a switch. Reid thought for a long moment, then nodded, slow, and they all wore it voluntarily, like they invited the storm. Graves added, "It's a message, Reid, not just for us, for the whole city. He's warning people, but they're not listening." Behind them, Patel walked in with a manila folder. Phone records came back. Emily's phone died at 10:07 p.m. near Crestline and 5th. Surveillance at the gas station across the street caught a dark figure trailing her. No face, no plates, just a shadow. Reid snatched the folder, flipping through the grainy screenshots. It was always like this. A shape, a blur, a breath just before the scream. He's not sloppy, Reid whispered. He's confident. Across town, at a candlelight vigil, outside Emily's workplace, 100 people stood in silence. Red candles burned in glass jars. Faces glowed behind dim flames. Photos of Emily were taped to the wall, smiling, laughing, unaware of what was coming. A sign above the entrance read, "She wore red. We wear red. We won't be silenced." Some blamed the police. Others blamed the curfew. Still others whispered about a serial killer the city didn't know how to stop, or didn't want to. The fear was growing, not just of the man behind the scalpel, but of the realization that he could be anyone. A coworker, a neighbor, man sitting beside you on the train. And as the vigil burned on, a figure stood across the street, watching. No one noticed him. His coat was gray. His hands were clean. And in his pocket, he carried a single red ribbon, folded neatly, like a signature waiting for its next canvas. Rain again. It hadn't stopped. In 2 days, a soft, constant drizzle veiled the city like a mourning shroud, blurring the skyline into a watercolor smear of lights and shadows. Inside the 7th precinct, the air was stale with overbrewed coffee and exhaustion. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Detective Reid Harlow sat at the edge of the briefing room table, sleeves rolled, eyes fixed on the board. 4 faces, 4. Red X's, 1 pattern, all women. All between 22 and 27. All last seen wearing something red. A 5th X was inevitable. He felt it in his bones. A door creaked open behind him. Special Agent Dana Wren entered, her FBI badge still wet from the rain, blonde hair tied in a severe bun. She tossed her soaked trench onto the coat rack and walked straight to the board. "So," she said, her voice clipped, clinical. "Your city has a collector." Reid didn't answer at first, just handed her a thin folder. She flipped through the photos, the alley, the bench, the symbols. Her brows tightened. Precision cuts, ritualistic markings, trophy placement. He's not just killing them, he's staging them. "He's got rules," Reid said, lighting a cigarette he wouldn't finish. "And a message." Wren nodded. "Killers like this always do. But they don't usually escalate this fast." Reid exhaled smoke. "This isn't escalation. This is a countdown." The local news anchor sat stiffly in the studio, makeup unable to hide the tension behind her eyes. And in breaking news, police have confirmed the identity of the young woman found murdered early this morning in Crestline Park. 24-year-old Emily Carter is now the 4th confirmed victim in what authorities believe is a serial killing spree. Photos of Emily flashed on screen. A smiling graduation shot. A selfie in a red coat. Then, briefly, crime scene footage, blurred but haunting. City officials are urging residents to avoid traveling alone after dark and to report any suspicious activity. A citywide curfew will be enforced starting tonight at 9 p.m. The footage cut to shaky cell phone video, rows of police cruisers blocking intersections, yellow tape fluttering in the wind, officers redirecting pedestrians. Angry voices rose. In the background, "We're not safe. Where are the cameras? Why red? Why always red?" Then a shot of a grieving father yelling into a reporter's mic. "My daughter wears red every day. Is that a death sentence now?" The public was spiraling. Fast. Lab techs moved like ghosts behind glass. Inside the sterile workspace, Agent Wren leaned over a table where evidence from the latest scene had been laid out. A silver bowl, blood samples, fibers from the mannequin. Dr. May, the lead forensic pathologist, spoke without lifting her head. "The cuts are shallow, surgical. No signs of sexual assault. No major organs targeted. So he's not interested in killing them for pain or control," Wren murmured. "He's displaying them." May nodded. "Also these markings? They aren't random." She slid a photograph across the table. Symbols carved into Emily's arms. Swirls, lines, intersecting patterns. On closer inspection, letters. Or something older. "We ran them through a database," May said. "One match. A cold case from 1993. Unsolved. 3 women. Same age range, same red clothing, same carvings. Wren's eyes narrowed. Where? Portland? Then it stopped. Until now. Across town, in a private recovery facility, a woman named Claire Jennings sat by a window, her eyes unfocused. Early 30s, pale, her wrists bore faint scars. Old, healed, but still whispering what she'd endured. She had gone missing 9 months ago, vanished for 4 days. When they found her, she was half-conscious in a drainage pipe outside the city, her memory fragmented and unreliable. Until now, no one had connected her to the killings. But when she saw Emily's photo on the news, something clicked. She screamed, cried, and whispered one word, gallery. She kept repeating it, rocking slowly. Reid stood behind the glass, watching. She's not making sense. She's traumatized, Wren said beside him. But she saw something. Maybe even him. Why release her? Reid asked quietly. If he never lets the others go? Wren didn't answer, but they both felt the same thing. The killer had wanted her to live, wanted her to remember. Maybe as a warning, or maybe as a witness. In a dim apartment, a man sat cross-legged on the floor, TV flickering across his expressionless face. Emily's name echoed from the screen. The crowd, the panic, the curfew. He smiled faintly, moved to a canvas stretched across the wall. It was half-painted, bold strokes of black and red. At its center, the faint silhouette of a woman. He stepped back, tilting his head. Almost. Perfect. Then he turned to a corkboard nearby. Photos, strings, names, red circles. A new name was scrawled in charcoal at the bottom. Claire Jennings. He pinned it up slowly, almost reverently, and whispered, Red always finds its way home. A dim hush covered Westbridge Avenue like a funeral veil. The rain had stopped hours ago, but the streets still glistened under the amber streetlights. Everything felt damp, slow, unsettled. Footsteps echoed softly as Allison Monroe, a 23-year-old journalism graduate, clutched her purse a little tighter, her nerves raw after the week's breaking news. Her headphones muffled the world, but not the instinct building inside her. She had taken this shortcut 100 times. Tonight, it felt wrong. 2 blocks back, she'd passed a man standing perfectly still under a broken lamppost, his face obscured, unmoving. She didn't stop, didn't look back, but the silence behind her felt heavier now. Even the distant sounds of traffic had disappeared. She turned the corner, entering a narrow lane squeezed between 2 construction sites. Scaffolding towered over her like metal skeletons. She increased her pace. The shadows moved faster. A gloved hand covered her mouth, the other yanking her by the waist. Her phone hit the ground with a crack. Her scream died inside her throat, dragged backward, into plastic sheets. Into darkness. He was calm, experienced, and he'd already prepared the space. At the same time, in the FBI field office of Portland, the war room buzzed with tension. Agents moved between whiteboards, coffee-stained printouts, and grainy surveillance stills. The 4th victim, Emily Carter, had shaken the city. But Reid Harlow wasn't distracted by panic. His eyes were fixed on patterns, on strings, and red threads pinned across the board, like arteries connecting every bleeding truth. He stood beside Agent Donna Cole, a behavioral analyst flown in from D.C. just this morning. Her eyes scanned the details like they were puzzle pieces long misplaced. 4 victims, Reid said aloud, his tone low. All women, ages 22 to 25. All wore red. All disappeared between 8 p.m. and midnight. Each found within 24 hours. No coat, no ID, no defensive wounds left at the scene. Cole didn't look up. He sedates them early, takes his time inside a controlled space, then poses the body with a signature. Red lipstick, a plastic rose. He's not just killing, Reid muttered. He's creating something. Across the room, a tech analyst waved them over. We pulled satellite maps and utility records. The alley where Emily was taken has no cameras, but 2 blocks down, there's a municipal CCTV. Caught a partial figure at 9:56 p.m. Hoodie, gloves, duffel bag, no clear face. He walks like ... like he's floating. Cole narrowed her eyes. He's rehearsed this, and he's escalating. Allison woke up groggy, her limbs weak. The air was cold, metallic. She was inside a shipping container, the walls lined with insulation foam, a single fluorescent tube flickering above. Her wrists were bound, ankles tied, a chair again. The same layout. Across from her was a mirror, tall and cracked. He entered. Quietly dressed in sterile white, gloves snug, hair slicked back. In one hand, he held a notepad. In the other, a red marker. He tilted his head as he studied her, as if measuring her spirit. "You wore earrings," he said softly, though only... His lips moved, his voice never reaching the air. He circled her, drew something in the notebook, then paused at her neck, brushing her hair aside. Allison flinched. He didn't react. Instead, he opened a black case on a nearby table, filled with instruments. Each glinted under the pale light like ceremonial blades. He picked up a brush dipped in antiseptic, painting a line across her shoulder. She began to sob. He didn't stop. In the live news broadcast, the anchor's voice cracked slightly as she read the report. Following the brutal murder of 24-year-old Emily Carter, the Portland Police Department, in coordination with the FBI, has issued a citywide curfew, beginning at 9 p.m. until further notice. Residents are urged to travel in groups, avoid isolated areas, and report any suspicious activity. This marks the fourth confirmed killing by what officials are now calling the Crimson Artist, a name coined by the press after investigators discovered a disturbing message carved into the latest crime scene. A pre-recorded segment played next. The mayor stood stiffly behind a podium, flanked by police officials. He tried to look calm. His voice trembled anyway. "This city will not surrender to fear. We will find this monster. We will bring him to justice." But outside the frame, in neighborhoods where redcoats were now buried in closets and late night walks had become urban legends. No one believed that anymore. In the Northern District, a security guard doing his rounds found something unusual. An envelope, RED, taped to the back gate of a freight container. He didn't open it. He called it in. When the crime scene team arrived, the area was already sealed. Inside the container, Allison's body was staged like a portrait. Her face powdered, lips colored with wine-colored lipstick, hands gently folded in her lap. No blood visible. Just lines. Perfect, intricate lines carved down her arms, like delicate red lace. Above her, on the steel wall, the killer had written a single sentence, using her own blood. "Red threads connect the living to the forgotten." In the FBI office, Reid read the message out loud. His cigarette shook slightly between two fingers. "This isn't about murder anymore," Cole said, her voice flat. "It's about legacy." Reid looked at the map again. The victims, the messages, the coats, the method. He circled 3 pins, drew a fourth. There was a shape forming, and it was bleeding red. The room buzzed with low murmurs and flickering monitors, blue light washing over. Tired faces. Reid stood still in front of the board, now cluttered with 4 victim profiles, red string, location pins, and time-stamped notes. Emily's blood-stained photo had just been pinned next to the others. Same pose, same expression, same coat. Now missing. The last message, carved into the bench and now magnified on screen, echoed in Reid's thoughts like a drumbeat. Red is not a color. It's a warning. He ran his fingers along the edges of the board, as if physically feeling the weight of the case might bring clarity. "Pull up all surveillance within a 5-mile radius of Crestline Avenue between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m., he ordered. His voice was rough from too much coffee, too little sleep. At another desk, Agent Lavra Bennett was typing furiously. She'd traced the blood symbols from Emily's arms. They weren't random. They matched an obscure symbology from 14th century Europe, once used by plague doctors. "It's a language," she said, not looking up. "And he's writing something." Reid turned. "Writing what?" She hesitated. "A pattern. A message, but it's incomplete. Every victim adds a new piece." Across the room, Agent Malik called out, "Got something." A black and white clip flickered onto the main screen. Blurry, infrared. A man, hooded, dragging something behind him. Time-stamped, 3:11 a.m. Location, warehouse district, near the docks. Freeze, Reid said. The screen paused. The figures. Head turned for a brief second. The face was shadowed, but the coat in his hand was visible. Bright red double quotes. Jesus ... double quotes, Lavra whispered. He dumped the body and took the coat again. Reid stepped closer. This bastard's collecting them. News anchors took over every major channel. Another brutal killing. Fourth young woman in just 6 weeks. The killer leaves another cryptic message, again referencing the color red. FBI urges citizens to stay indoors after dark, as panic spreads across the city. The city mayor, flanked by reporters, stood stiff at the podium. We are declaring a citywide curfew from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. effective immediately. The FBI has our full cooperation. We will not let this man continue terrorizing our people. Social media exploded. Red emojis. Photos of the 4 victims. Hashtags. Hashtag red warning. Hashtag CRESTLINE killer. Hashtag not another name. Emily single quotes, as mother collapsed on the porch steps when the agents knocked. She didn't need to hear the words. She already knew. Inside, the living room was a museum of Emily's life. Graduation photos, coffee mugs, a red scarf draped over a chair. I told her not to walk alone. I told her, her father whispered, broken, over and over. Laura found a journal beside Emily's bed. The last entry read, Crestline always feels a little off at night. Like something's watching. Reid stared at the map. The locations weren't random. They were forming a spiral, expanding outward from the subway ruins beneath the city. He marked the center. It's a nest, he muttered. Lara looked up. You think he's living down there? I think he started there. And he's spiraling out, which means we have one chance to catch him before he vanishes further. Reid turned to the room. Tonight, we bait him. Everyone looked up. We're going to place a decoy. Young, red coat. High visibility. Same route as Emily. We'll watch every alley, every shadow. If he's watching, he'll take the bait. Malik raised an eyebrow. And if he doesn't bite? Reid lit another cigarette. Then we wait. But we don't sleep. Not until this bastard is behind glass ... or in a body bag. The killer moved through a narrow tunnel beneath the city. Bare feet. Calm breath. In his hand, a new photo, freshly printed. A red-jacketed woman who didn't know she'd just been chosen. He stopped at a wall where 4 mannequins stood, each wearing a red coat. Each posed exactly as the bodies had been found. He placed the 5th coat neatly into a plastic sleeve. Then he whispered, almost complete, and taped the new photo to the wall. Inside the FBI's dimly lit operations room, the atmosphere had turned silent, oppressive even. As the tape finished playing, Reid stood frozen in place, the killer's chilling voice still echoing in his ears. The room was drenched in a low hum from the machines, but no one dared speak. Each agent, pale and grim, processed the killer's cryptic taunt. I left her somewhere peaceful. You like puzzles, don't you? Reid stepped back from the monitor, his jaw clenched. His eyes shifted toward the whiteboard, covered with photographs, locations, and red strings connecting the chaos. He stared at it like it owed him answers. Ren, standing a few feet behind, observed him carefully. She knew the look in his eyes. It was the same one she had seen when he broke the cartel case 3 years ago. At 6:42 a.m., the sun had not yet risen, but inside the room, the energy shifted. Reid pulled up the timestamp on the tape and sensed it with citywide CCTV footage. Within minutes, the team narrowed the killer's route using partial glimpses of a van captured across traffic cams. They traced it to a remote greenhouse on the outskirts of Portland. By 7:20 a.m., a tactical team had already surrounded the property. Reid, along with Ren and a forensic crew, stepped into the humid, eerily quiet greenhouse. The scent of damp earth and wilted flowers lingered like a memory left too long in the dark. She was there. The girl, victim number 10, lay unconscious but alive, tied to an old wooden bench beneath a canopy of dying orchids. Her face was pale, her wrists bruised, but her breathing was steady. On the bench beside her, carved carefully into the wood, was a final message. This one doesn't die. Yet, as the paramedics rushed her out, Reid stared at the carved words. Something in him twisted. This wasn't the end. This was the transition. The killer wasn't finished. He was evolving. Back at the bureau, the mood was more tense than triumphant. Saving one life did not erase the others. But more than that, the killer had made a choice to let her live. It was deliberate. Psychological Doc Reid sat down at his desk and pulled open the files again, aligning photographs of the victims in a new order. Suddenly, something clicked. He noticed a pattern in the locations where the bodies were found. They weren't random. They formed a spiral, outward from the original abduction site. Each body a step away from the last. And at the center of that spiral was something unexpected. A decommissioned psychiatric hospital shut down over a decade ago. He cross-referenced the building with Portland's records. There, buried in old hospital admission logs, was a name. Marcus Hawley, committed at age 14 after a series of violent attacks. Released at 21. Vanished. Reid whispered the name again under his breath. Marcus Hawley? And with it, the air in the room seemed to change. He called Ren over, his voice tight with urgency. The records linked Marcus to a girl, a red-haired patient who died under suspicious circumstances during treatment. It was the only girl listed on his case file, and her name was Jasmine Keller. And randomly processed the information. The pieces began to align. The red clothing, the obsession, the surgical precision. Jasmine had been wearing red the day she died. Reid knew they were close, closer than ever. He stood up, grabbing his coat. We're going to the hospital, he said, not looking back. By the time they reached the crumbling structure, the sun had risen, casting long shadows over the weed-infested grounds. The building stood like a scar on the landscape. Broken windows, rusted gates, and silence. Inside, dust floated in the stale air, disturbed only by their slow, careful footsteps. The team fanned out, checking rooms one by one. Reid's flashlight landed on a wall filled with photographs, newspaper clippings, sketches, and red threads mirroring the one in their own office. But these weren't victims. These were investigators, journalists, anyone who ever got close. And in the middle, circled in thick black ink, Reid's face. From somewhere deep within the building, a soft creak echoed. They were not alone. Reid motioned for silence as the team regrouped. Down a narrow corridor, a door was left slightly ajar. Beyond it, darkness. He reached for the handle, pulse quickening. The game was no longer about bodies. It was about him now. The hunter had become the hunted. The heavy door creaked open, revealing a pitch-black room that swallowed the flashlight's beam whole. A damp, metallic scent hung in the air, something between rust and rotting wood. Reid stepped inside first, his weapon lowered but ready, his breath steady but cold. The others followed silently, flashlights sweeping over the broken tiles and peeling walls of what once had been the hospital's electroshock therapy ward. In the center of the room stood a rusted gurney, empty, but beside it, chained too. The wall, like a grotesque piece of forgotten history, was a mannequin dressed in a red hoodie, the same kind every victim had worn. A printed photograph was pinned to its chest, a black and white shot of Jasmine Keller in her hospital bed. Barely a teenager. Ren moved forward and grabbed the photo, reading the note scribbled on its back in jagged handwriting. She was the first. You all just watched. Suddenly, a projector on the far side of the room flickered to life. Dust danced in its beam as old security footage began to play on the cracked wall. A younger Marcus Hawley sat restrained in a hospital bed, screaming, not in rage, but in terror. In the background, a red-haired girl was wheeled past in a stretcher, limp, her eyes wide open but lifeless. Reid's eyes locked on the screen. The killer hadn't just witnessed trauma. He had lived it, over and over again. Every girl in red wasn't just a victim. She was Jasmine, resurrected and destroyed again and again, to punish the world for letting her die. The screen faded to black, and then a live feed appeared. A camera somewhere deep within the hospital was now active, showing a young girl, tied up, unconscious, wearing red. She was still alive. And then, that voice again, not recorded this time. From a hidden speaker in the room, the killer whispered, "She be the last, Agent Reid, unless you let go of your logic and feel what I felt." Reid didn't flinch. He stared into the lens as if the killer was watching from behind it. "You want me to feel your pain? Fine," he muttered under his breath, turning on his radio. "Lock the perimeter. He's here." The team moved quickly, sweeping through the building, down a staircase, through a crumbling hallway, until Reid stopped outside the morgue door. Behind it, silence. He slowly pushed it open. The killer stood there. Marcus Halley, now 40, but with a face hollowed out by years of obsession, wore a clean lab coat and a twisted, unblinking smile. The girl lay behind him, on another gurney, her pulse weak but steady. "Do you see her?" Marcus whispered, gesturing to the girl without breaking eye contact. "That's Jasmine, again. Always Jasmine. She begs to be saved, and you, all of you, keep failing her." Reid didn't raise his weapon. He stepped forward, voice low. "She's not Jasmine," he said. "She's just a girl. You're the only one killing her again and again." For the first time, Marcus's smile twitched. His fingers trembled. He glanced at the girl, then back at Reid. "You don't understand," he whispered, voice breaking. "They watched her die. No one stopped it. No one cared." "I believe you," Reid said quietly. "I know they failed her. But you're becoming them, Marcus, and you hate them." That moment, that second of confusion, was all they needed. Renly moved in fast, tackling Marcus from the side, as another agent rushed to the girl. Marcus screamed, not in rage, but grief. Deep, agonizing grief. He clawed at the air as if Jasmine was being torn from him again. But this time, no one died. The girl was saved. Marcus was cuffed, dragged away screaming Jasmine's name into the long corridors of the asylum. Outside, the morning light had fully broken through the clouds. The girl was placed into an ambulance. She opened her eyes for a moment, met Reid's gaze, and tried to speak, but he gently shook his head. "You're safe now," he said quietly, and watched as the doors closed behind her, out behind him. The asylum loomed, a crumbling shell of broken minds and lost ghosts. But the case was over, for now. But in Reid's chest, a weight still sat heavy. The killer had been caught, the victims buried. But Jasmine's face, young, pale, afraid, lingered in the corners of his thoughts. Because for some people, justice isn't enough. Not when the past refuses to stay buried. 2 days later, the city is quiet again. Sirens no longer echo through the streets. Streets once painted with fear now breathe relief. News channels are filled with updates about Marcus Hale's arrest. His mugshot is everywhere, a once-forgotten mental patient turned serial mastermind. But inside the FBI office, Agent Reid isn't celebrating. He sits in the evidence room, staring at a dusty shoebox labeled JK-2003. Jasmine Keller's original file, old photographs, therapy notes, unseen, unread. Ignored. Reid plays a final piece of evidence, retrieved from Marcus's hideout. A tape. The screen flickers. It's Marcus, speaking directly into the camera, long before he was caught. "If you're watching this, then you finally listened. But it's too late. Jasmine is still dead. And now, so are many others, each one just like her. I didn't kill them. I showed them what it feels like to be forgotten." He laughed softly. "Not evil, just broken. You think arresting me stops anything? There are others. Always have been. Always will be." Click. Tape ends. Reid leans back in his chair, face unreadable. Outside the window, the world moves on. Kids walk home in red sweatshirts. A news van reports Liv from outside the asylum, calling Marcus Halley the ghost of Jasmine. Justice was served. But trauma doesn't vanish. It echoes, in rooms, in memories, in new names. The screen fades to black. A final line appears in white text. Monsters aren't born. They're built and forgotten. 2 days had passed since Marcus Hale's arrest, but the weight of what he had done still hung heavily over the city, like a thick fog refusing to lift. Though the streets were no longer echoing with sirens, and the red dresses had disappeared from sidewalks, the silence that remained wasn't peace, it was aftermath. News outlets looped his mugshot with bold headlines. The Red Phantom caught? Asylum. Escapee responsible for serial murders. The ghost of Jasmine, Marcus Hale, in custody. Talk shows speculated about his mental health, his obsession with red clothing, his years inside and outside the system. But none of them understood the darkness he carried, or how long it had been ignored. Inside the FBI Secure Evidence Facility, Agent Reid sat alone under a dim ceiling light. The rest of the team had gone home, their bodies exhausted from the weeks of relentless horror. But Reid couldn't leave. Not yet. Not until he heard the last thing Marcus had to say. On the steel table in front of him sat a small box labeled in faded black marker, JK-2003. He gently lifted the lid. Inside were old files, torn therapy notes, and a faded school photo of Jasmine Keller, the girl whose story had been buried in system archives, unacknowledged until now. Her eyes were kind, her smile innocent, unaware of the destruction her loss would one day trigger. Reid's gaze drifted to another item on the table, a dusty camcorder tape found hidden beneath Marcus's mattress in the warehouse. No label, no timestamp, just a silent relic of something unspoken. He inserted the tape into the old player. Static buzzed on the screen before clearing into the image of Marcus Hale, seated on a folding chair in a dark, concrete room. His face was gaunt, his eyes wide and reflective, as if speaking into a mirror. "If you're watching this," Marcus began, voice eerily calm, "and you finally listened. You finally saw me." He looked directly into the lens. There was no mask now, no rage, just raw, unfiltered pain. But it's too late. Jasmine is still dead, and now, so are many others. Each one of them wore red. Each one reminded me of her. His hands trembled slightly in his lap, but his voice remained steady. "I didn't kill them because I hated them. I killed them because no one remembered her. Not the therapists, not the cops, not the world. Jasmine Keller vanished into a system that buried her, and I brought her back." He leaned forward, his breath fogging the lens. "You think putting me in a cell changes that? You think locking me away stops anything? There are others like me. Always have been. Always will be." He gave a weak smile, more tragic than triumphant, and then the screen turned black. Just static. Reid sat frozen, the silence in the room louder than the message. No fury, no defiance. Just truth from a fractured mind. Outside the evidence rooms, narrow window, the world had resumed its pace. A group of teenagers walked past the building, unaware of the history written inside. One of them wore a red hoodie. Reid watched him disappear into the streetlight's glow, and for a brief second, his heart stopped. He shook it off. But the unease didn't fade. He knew better than to believe evil ended with an arrest. Elsewhere in the city, a memorial wall had started forming near the riverbank. Photos, candles, and red flowers lined the fencing. Parents wept. Strangers stared. The names of the victims were read aloud at a community vigil that night. And while the crowd prayed, not a single person mentioned Marcus Hale. They only whispered the victims' names. Jasmine's name led the list. Back at the FBI field office, Reid placed Jasmine's file back into the box. He closed the lid slowly, as if sealing away something sacred and cursed. But this time, he wrote a new label on top. Jasmine Keller. Never forgotten. He placed it on the evidence shelf himself. As the hallway lights dimmed behind him, a voice played again in his mind, not from the tape, but from Marcus's arrest. "You're late, Reid. You are always late." Just like with her. Reid didn't respond back then, and he didn't respond now. But the guilt never really left. The camera pans out from the building, rising over the city's quiet skyline. In the distance, another siren howled, brief and nine. Distant but enough to remind them all, some ghosts don't die. They just wait for someone else to listen. As the screen fades to black, white text appears. Monsters aren't born. They're built. And forgotten.